Now we'd like to start the third session, Europe's security and its implications to the Indo-Pacific. First of all, His Excellency Mr. Hanno Pevkul is going to give us his remarks, the keynote speech.
Dear colleagues and esteemed guests, honored Sasan, konnichiwa. Tere. Tere is in Estonian, konnichiwa. So this is hello. It is a profound honor to stand before you today at the 6th Tokyo Global Dialogue. For me, Japan has always been a country whose rich history, deep cultural heritage, and unparalleled contributions to the world are admired across the globe. This is why I would like to begin by expressing my heartfelt gratitude for the warm welcome I have received since arriving in Japan. Your hospitality is a reflection of the values of kindness, respect, and harmony that are at the heart of the Japanese culture and what we miss today in many places across the globe. As it is my first time to be here in Tokyo in the capacity of the Minister of Defense of Estonia, let me assure you that I take this visit as a testament to the increasing cooperation between like-minded countries. Estonia and Japan share fundamental values within the security realm as the world has entered a new tumultuous period in its history. We also value highly Japan's steadfast partnership and initiative in developing defense cooperation both with Estonia and with NATO. I would also like to congratulate Japan for your successful inauguration of mission of Japan to NATO on 15th of January 2025. We warmly welcome Japan's strategic aim to contribute to enhancing the security of the Euro-Atlantic and Indo-Pacific communities. Japan's decisiveness and ingenuity within the defense realm is visible to everyone all around the globe. We commend you for it because this is exactly what the world needs now: political leadership and bold decisions. So, ladies and gentlemen, as a Minister of Defense of a country bordering an aggressive neighbor, it is part of my job to describe the threat picture, which is the most significant and direct threat to our collective security. In 2022, on Estonian Independence Day, on 24th of February, Russia invaded Ukraine and began a full-scale conventional war of aggression in Europe. On a scale that the world hasn't seen since the Second World War, and Europe has experienced atrocious acts of war throughout the past decades. But the sheer scale, size, and brutality of Russia's aggression took, unfortunately, many by surprise. On 24th of February 2022, Russia sent the democratic world a message. Russia is clear and determined on its intent set out in their demands to NATO. Russia demands a ban on Ukraine's future membership in NATO and for NATO to roll back to its pre-1997 borders that would include the Baltics and Poland. Russia is seeking to limit its neighbors' sovereignty and attempts to re-establish its sphere of influence. The ultimate goal of Russia continues to be to disrupt the collectiveness of the West, to dismantle the rules-based world order, which is the cornerstone of the democratic community's stability. honored guests, we know that Russia has suffered severe losses on the battlefields in Ukraine. Soon, close to 1 million soldiers have been killed or wounded in action, numbers that are unimaginable. Just to compare, Estonia's population is 1.3 million. But for Russia, these losses have neither altered its strategic ambitions nor reduced its military significance. Today, Russian armed forces are numerically bigger than before the invasion. They have successfully managed to avoid another public mobilization wave by using different covert means to increase their forces, and also by cooperating with North Korea, for instance. They have increased during the war their defense budget close to 10% of their GDP. In fact, over the past 25 years, Russia has increased its defense spending by close to 600% and China over 800%, against the combined NATO and EU defense spending increase of 46%. So 600 compared to 46%. While engaged in Ukraine, let's do not forget that Russia has launched a military reform that aims to expand the peacetime military forces to 1.5 million troops by 2027. By the end of this reform, Russia's military presence in regions like the Baltics will be at least 2.5 times what it was before the invasion of Ukraine. Moreover, Russia has fully mobilized its military-industrial complex. In 2024, they increased the production of different types of artillery shells from 1 million to more than 4 million. This is a clear signal that Russia is not only preparing for a long conflict, but is also increasing its production and recovery capacity with the help of military support from North Korea and Iran. Today, North Korea provides most of the shelling ammunition used in Ukraine, allowing Russia to simultaneously restock its strategic reserves. As long as the war continues in Ukraine, Russia's main resources will remain focused there. We cannot ignore the reality that should these hostilities end in favorable terms to Russia, these resources can be redirected, allowing Russia to complete its military reforms, increase its readiness, and ultimately present a more immediate, aggressive, and war-experienced threat to Euro-Atlantic community. Thankfully, we can say today that Ukraine is in a bit better position in terms of its ammunition reserves, comparing a year ago. The Western military aid is reaching Ukraine, ensuring Ukraine has the necessary volumes of ammunition available to uphold and push back at the front. This is an important fact, because for a while now there has been a sense of pessimism about the possibility of Ukraine winning the war. These pessimistic views are flaming the narratives paving the way to unjust peace talks. It is our view that Ukraine cannot be forced to the negotiation table, and most definitely they cannot be forced to peace negotiations without having a strong hand. But let's face it, at this very moment, President Putin is not looking for the peace. Russia continues to perceive that time is on its side. We need to exploit this perception to our own and Ukraine's advantage. Russia's economy is dependent on its military-industrial complex, making it vulnerable to pressure. We need to continue raising the cost of war for Russia. It is possible to bring it closer to a breaking point. And it is not too late, and together we can do a lot more. The successful delivery of the military aid to Ukraine proves that we just need to continue doing what we are already doing, giving Ukraine all the military assistance it needs. Together we are more than capable of helping Ukraine not just to fight, but to position itself to win the war. Or, rephrasing one of the most famous sentences of the world, we should ask ourselves, to fight or to win? That is the question. You might ask, why am I talking so much about Ukraine? Let us not forget that hundreds of soldiers, some days even thousands, are either killed or wounded. That means that even at this very moment, when I delivered this address here in Tokyo, at least 10 people are killed in Ukraine war. Dear friends, authoritarian regimes are on the way, attempting to disrupt the international system by force. We cannot afford to sit back and hope for a change. It is our collective duty to make matters in our own hands, increase our defense readiness as fast as possible, and stand firmly for the democracy in the world. Because democracy's biggest vulnerability is a lack of people's activity, or as the great English philosopher and politician Edmund Burke once said, all that is needed for the triumph of evil is that good people do nothing. Only by increasing our defense readiness will we be able to deter an aggressor. Authoritarian regimes need to be deterred, not just discouraged, because autocracy and dictatorship is not the way of living we are used to. We know that once dictators are in power, it is hard, if not possible, to stop them. We have to have a very clear and vocal understanding of the need to stand up for freedom, territorial integrity, and in addition to diplomatic efforts, to keep Russia under control with a clear and strong military deterrence. One might ask, why? Because we see that the new axis of evil, the CRINC, namely China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, has accelerated the pace of cooperation and has encouraged some other authoritarians to take advantage of recent opportunities. And in authoritarian system, the driving force is ensuring the survival of the regime. Estonia knows this from its own sad history. That is why in the past 2 weeks, Estonia and other Baltic states have announced that we are aiming to increase our defense spending up to 5% of our GDP. This will make the Baltic countries the top 3 investors in NATO. In fact, already today, Estonia spends close to 3.5% of its GDP on defense, placing us ahead of the United States and the second after Poland in NATO in terms of GDP percentage spent on defense. But the reality is that all the NATO countries in Europe must do more, because contributing even 5% for deterrence is much cheaper compared to the cost of war, which by Ukrainian example is more than 30% of their GDP annually. Some claim that the percentage of GDP spent on defense is not a valid comparison data point. It might be not ideal, but in reality, there is no other indicator showing the will and the intent to put the money on the table for defense. After all, procurement plans and capability acquisitions do require money, not just planning or restructuring. Furthermore, as the war in Ukraine shows, Russia can only be deterred by hard power in bulk, not just by new technology alone, which may have their advantages, but will not defend against human wave tactics, massive artillery shelling, or missile attacks. That is why Estonia will continue to advocate to reach a new, substantially higher defense pledge agreement in NATO Hague Summit this summer. And that is also why like-minded democracies all over the world need to continue putting all their efforts into supporting Ukraine in winning the war. Today, Estonia is #1 Ukraine supporter per capita. We will keep our commitment of supporting Ukraine with 0.25% of our GDP every year, and we invite everyone to do the same. The time for win-win rhetoric is over. Russia made sure of that by starting a war in Europe. Let's make sure now that the end of Ukraine's war will not provide a blueprint for any future conflicts in the regions, such as the Indo-Pacific. Ladies and gentlemen, we are quite possibly at the beginning of a curve of instability. Yet, we have time. We are some distance away from any culminations. I see a steadily increasing momentum where Europe, NATO, and our global allies, such as Japan, are catching up and rebuilding their defense capabilities. I would also like to commend Japan's outstanding commitment in supporting Ukraine, including being part of IT coalition, which is led by Estonia and Luxembourg. It takes time to realign with the new way of thinking, but I believe we are on the right track. After the great election year of 2024, I hope in 2025 we will see bolder political leadership and decisions based on shared values. Thank you very much. ありがとうございます。
ペブクール大臣どうもありがとうございました。Thank you very much, Minister Pevko.